Hello, this is Chapter 10 on marketing research. I have some fun marketing cartoons for you to get started. I'll let you laugh, and then we'll get started on the content. So marketing research and big data. Marketing research is collecting and managing information about what customers need and want. And it's challenging for marketers to keep up with what customers need and want. It comes from a variety of sources, such as studies that are designed to gather specific information, and then sales reports, accounting reports, and published reports. And it's a 6-step process to conduct market research. Here's the 6 steps, and in this example, we're going to use Tombstone frozen pizza. First step is knowing what your problem is. So a well-defined problem permits the researchers to focus on getting the exact information that they need, but it's harder than it seems. That clearly defining the question that needs to be answered is difficult, and that has to be set first before moving on with the rest of the research. This is the most difficult step, and researchers have to be careful not to confuse the symptoms of the problem with the problem itself. So taking our pizza example, frozen pizza Tombstone is seeing that its market share dropped from 8% to 5% in the last 6 months. So this loss of market share is a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself. So defining the problem means looking into the underlying causes of why the market share has dropped. Number 2, the second step is exploratory research. And this seeks to discover the cause of the specific problem by doing some exploring. So you're going to discuss the problem with informed sources, both inside and outside of the firm, and examine some data that you have from other sources. This includes speaking with your own employees. That's a great place to start. Evaluating company records, looking at sales and profit analysis, and competitive data. Sales data compares actual sales versus expected sales. Accounting data, all the financial statements that a company might have, and then looking at previous year's history. And marketing cost analysis is the evaluation for marketing tasks, selling, advertising, promotions, and so on. The third step in the process, after you've defined the problem and conducted your exploratory research, is the marketers want to formulate a hypothesis, a tentative explanation for why something is going on, the specific event is going on. And is a testable statement about the relationship among variables, and it's going to set the stage for more in-depth research by clarifying what the researchers are testing. Let's go back to our Tombstone example. And Tombstone Pizza has developed 2 hypotheses. So if the objective is we want to determine what factors are contributing to this market share loss in our sales from 8% to 5%, then the question we're going to ask ourselves is what has changed so that we are losing market share? So hypothesis 1 is maybe consumer tastes have changed. You know, Tombstone is a pretty traditional pizza. with, you know, cheese and pepperoni and flavors that have been around forever. And consumers seem to really want, you know, white sauce pizza with spinach and sun-dried tomatoes and a whole bunch of different upscale items. Hypothesis 2 that Tombstone is considering is the quality of cheese has diminished, that our supplier of cheese has changed their quality. The fourth step, and now you're going to test your hypotheses and find solutions to your marketing problems and get to the working part and create the research design. It's a master plan for conducting market research. So planning what you're going to set out to do. You want to make sure that you are measuring what you are intending to measure. It sounds simple, but the researchers really need to ask themselves if that's happening. Because poorly designed research plans will provide misleading or inaccurate results and waste valuable resources. You have to start all over. The survey should be designed so that the answers can be captured and analyzed easily and give the correct picture to the analysts. If the questionnaire is wrong, then you can't go back and redo your survey without lots of time, lots of money, and you're probably going to have to honestly pick a different sample because you're going to say, oh gosh, could you take another quick 10 minutes and fill out this survey? So for Tombstone Pizza, they have a couple steps they want to do. First, they're going to do the customer survey. So somehow they're going to get access to their customer data, people who have bought pizza in the last 6 months, and give them an online survey. And one of the questions would be, would you be willing to participate in a test kitchen? And so that would be maybe their second step, is to have a test kitchen to test out flavors or cheese, since quality of cheese is one of the hypotheses that's on the table. All right, now, fifth step, step number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is collecting the data. So now you know how in the previous step, you figured out how you're going to do it. Now you're going to take that action. Secondary data is information that is secondhand. It's already been published or compiled for some other reason. Remember, we looked at the census, the US Census in class. That is a perfect example of secondary data. It's already been collected. Primary data refers to information collected for the first time, and it's specifically for the market research that you're conducting. Secondary data offers 2 important advantages. Secondary data costs less than primary data, and it saves time because it's already out there. So researchers are not taking as much time as it does to collect primary data. But, you know, there's give and take to every situation. The limitations of primary data is that maybe it becomes obsolete, that it was a study or research that was published long ago, and with such quickly changing times and technology that the information is obsolete. Also, the secondary data may be for unrelated purposes. Maybe it's super close to what you're studying, but not quite. So you find perhaps information that was published on frozen calzones or frozen Stouffer's lasagna. Gosh, that's close, but it's not exactly aligned with what we are studying, but it's helpful. Last step in the marketing research process is to interpret the findings. And now you're going to present them to the decision makers in a format that allows them to make effective judgments. So you're not going to give them all your raw data. The researchers are going to write up a nice report, interpret the findings, and present them to the managers. So making sure that there's not a lot of statistical analysis, perhaps that can be in the appendices, but not right in the plan. So oral and written reports should be presented in a manner designed to minimize misinterpretations. So following these 6 steps in the market research process, a company can conduct effective research that influences a number of decisions about their marketing mix, your 4 Ps. Let's look at this ad campaign. SAAB automobiles are manufactured in Switzerland, and they have a reputation as having high quality vehicles. So they developed this ad campaign, SAAB versus. So SAAB versus these different things. And so take a moment and look at these ads and think, this costs a lot of money. These are print ads that are probably in upscale magazines, Town and Country, Alaska Magazine, maybe, Southern Living, something like those types of magazines. All right, that costs a lot of money, and these are full color. So what kind of research went into these? You're seeing use of color. What are the different target markets with the one on the left versus the one on the center versus the one on the right? And just saying, to sum up, that these ads are not inexpensive, and SAAB itself, in order to appeal to its target market, has done research. So these decisions of what customers' needs and wants are heavily aligned with market research. All right, let's step back into the secondary versus primary data and dig a little deeper. So again, secondary data is information that is collected secondhand. It's previously published, and it comes from many sources. Overwhelmingly, the quantity of secondary data is at little or at no costs. Challenges researchers to select only data relevant to the question being researched. And you can see that there are 4 main sources of secondary data listed in this slide. And breaking down those 4 sources, the first one is internal data. And this could mean sales records, product performance reviews, website analytics works, and marketing reports. And you can just find all kinds of valuable data internally in your own firm's records. A marketer might analyze sales performance to get that overall view of the company and see if there's efficiency or inefficiency, and find those clues to potential problems. Sales analysis is pretty inexpensive, and most important, one of the most important sources of marketing available to the firm is you're going to unearth that sales data and take a look there to see if that's giving you any clues of what's going on. Accounting data is the financial statements, as we mentioned before. But internal data is very valuable, but it's limited in scope. It's telling you a story, but you want to do some additional data as well. Here are the 3 sources of external secondary data. Government data is the leading source of marketing data. Again, I'm going to point you back to the census that we've looked at in class. There's a census of housing population, business, manufacturing, agriculture, minerals, governments. All this type of stuff is listed on there. And the Census Bureau conducts a census of a population every 10 years with various updates, by the way. Our second bullet point is industry publications. There's going to be a trade association for any company that exists. So there's going to be an excellent source of data provided with business and trade magazines. You can see the example here. Who knew there was a refrigerated and frozen food magazine? Perfect for Tombstone Pizza to look up information here or stories that have been written or keep up on trends. Lastly is national research services that people are more than willing to collect data and then sell it back to you. So there's two big companies. There's GfK Roper, and they provide data on customer attitudes, life stages, lifestyle, and buying behavior for 30 developed and developing countries. And you've probably heard of Nielsen, the Nielsen ratings. They're also a national firm, and they have an array of services from audience segmentation for you to package design. Let's switch to primary data. This is gathering fresh data about a particular subject for the first time. So you or your company are the ones collecting it. It requires a lot of time, money, resources, and you need to have some prior information about the subject. The research can be performed through observation, survey, and test marketing. And what choice is made is going to depend on what you're studying. And in some cases, it's going to be a combination of methods, just like for our going back to our Tombstone Pizza where I discussed. First, we'll do a survey, and then we'll go into the test kitchen. All right, let's explore these a little further. So if you are trying to understand how consumers behave in a particular situation, observation is a very useful technique. And observational studies are just what it sounds like. Researchers view the overt actions of the subject they're studying. Examples of this might be counting cars passing by in a potential site for a restaurant. Have you ever seen somebody sitting in the lawn chair and there's one of those wires across the road and they're simply counting the cars? Maybe somebody is doing a traffic count to see, should we put another restaurant here or another coffee stand here? Another example would be having customers video themselves as they're unpacking and using a product for the first time. How difficult is it to unpack? Does the customer understand it right away? So just watching what's going on. Another type of observation method is the interpretive research. And this is when a researcher observes a customer or groups of customers in their natural setting and interprets their behavior, putting in those social and cultural characteristics that are natural in that setting. So in this picture, we see a mother and a child playing together. So they put them maybe in their house or maybe in a lab where you just say, go ahead and start playing. Because you want to see what that natural interaction looks like and how they play and what colors they're attracted to and how they stack the toys. So this would be a interpretive research for a toy company. Well, let's see here. Okay, second primary research method is survey. So there's observation, just watching people alone. That's only one type of information. I'm sure that you have taken a survey at some point in your life. Surveys ask questions to get information on demographics, attitudes, motives, and opinions. This can be done by telephone, personal interviews, one-on-one, and then focus groups. Focus groups are 6 to 8 people in a room. You want to run a series of focus groups, so you wouldn't just have one focus group. That's not very helpful. You'd have a series of at least 4 to 6 focus groups, again, with about 6 to 8 people. That way you can see some underlying trends, some commonalities and some themes if you have several focus groups, and that's much more valuable. And then, of course, there's online or mail surveys as well. The last form of primary data that we're discussing is test marketing. And it involves introducing a new product in a specific geographic area and then watching the degree of success. It's the first stage where the product performs in a real life environment. So you don't sometimes want to just put your product out to market. You want to put it in a smaller test market to make sure before going into full-scale production. Test marketing is problematic and that is expensive. And then once you do a test market, people will talk about it. So competitors are quickly going to learn about it and give them time to develop competing products. And then some products just aren't well suited to test marketing. But on the other hand, if you can test market on a small scale, you're ultimately going to save companies money because it gives them the ability to identify problems within the marketing mix, your 4 Ps, and then fix them before rolling out the product nationwide. Knowing the differences between primary and secondary data in the gathering methods are going to help marketers as they decide which data should I be collecting and to answer my research question. So I'm going to say for Tombstone Pizza that it was changing consumer tastes. They did all the work, they did all their surveys, their test kitchen, and it's just people want more than a classic pepperoni these days. You can refer to Exhibit 10.3 in your book and see the summary of primary versus secondary types of marketing research. We just had the chapter on global marketing, and companies are expanding more and more into other nations. And so they're going to need to gather information about consumers in the countries that they are doing business in. It's the same basic steps, but there's some challenges. There's 4 considerations for conducting research in a global market. Access to secondary data is what we're going to start with. And not every country has a census data like the United States. Second is language differences. And when conducting international studies, companies must be prepared for not only language, but cultural differences, even when conducting the simplest of surveys. Remember, we talked about those translation issues that even some of our big companies had, like Coors and Gerber's baby food? Well, you don't want that to happen on your survey. Poorly translated research questions could result in misleading data and lead to errors. The global business environment includes political and economic conditions, trade regulations, and potential for any short or long-term growth. So let's assume a company has learned that its product category is expected to grow 30% in China for the next 10 years. However, if political unrest happens or trade conditions change, it's going to prevent the company from expanding to China in the first place. So it may want to, but it can't. Our last point on this slide is data collection methods. Businesses are just going to have to think about their data collection methods for primary research in other companies, because some methods just don't easily transfer across national frontiers. For example, face-to-face interviews are the most common method for conducting primary research outside the United States. So they want that one-to-one interaction, consumers do. But that's costly, and if you're used to getting quick and fast information from surveys, it just might not work in the countries in which you're doing business. So to sum up, market researchers follow the same basic steps. They just have some challenges to add to the basket of challenges they're going to have when doing global business. Lastly, let's talk about technology. And it's through technology that research methods have become more sophisticated. There's 3 key ways that computer technology has significantly changed marketing research. And then the first is data collection. And in the past, you actually had to do Excel spreadsheets, or even before that, do slower types of computer methods and tabulate the data manually. But of course, this is not the case. Internet, people are more, we have what, 87% of the population has access to a computer one way or the other in the United States. And so you see a lot more online surveys, plus online focus groups. So with all the video conferencing capabilities we have, you can do online focus groups. And the beauty of that is transcribing. It will be instantly transcribed with software. Also, observing consumer behavior. I mean, you don't have to bring them to the laboratory anymore. You can just live stream, video chat, all types of different ways. Let's talk about the second bullet point here, or hash point, I guess we should say, is data reporting and access. In the past, research organizations often compiled reports and then sold them back to marketers, charging very high prices. No longer, market research can now be acquired more quickly and less expensively than other. It's that whole supply and demand relationship. And lastly, data analysis. Again, in the past, marketers had to manually interpret data to make marketing decisions, but now technology comes in and allows marketers to quickly process massive amounts of complex data that would be impossible to interpret manually, and so much more quickly. That's that concept of big data. You know what happens when you see this slide. These are the things that were covered in this chapter. And if you've made it this far and are still listening, do not forget to take your online quiz. Thank you.